Hello, book lovers. Welcome to Must Love Books.
Hello and good morning, everyone. I am Crystal Hope from Must Love Books podcast with a special guest today, Edie Cay. And we are here to talk about the politics of reading romance. We are also recording live today, so this will air on Must Love Books podcast. So a little bit about me. I am Crystal Hope. I am a writer, a book lover, and the host of Must Love Books podcast. And I am also the organizer for the Book Podcast Connection, which is a networking group of over 100 book-related podcasts. So there's more of us than you think. There's more of us than I had thought, even when I first started book podcasting. I have been running this podcast for about a year and a half. I mostly focus on author interviews, both indie and trad, and sprinkling a few bestsellers in there, here and there. And I also have the semi-monthly meeting of the Something's Funny Book Club, which is a book club of me and 5 of my cousins. And we basically read anything that is short, weird, and dirty, and have a few bottles of wine and lots of cheese, and then record ourselves laughing for 2 hours. It's a great time. And so I'll go ahead and let Edie introduce herself.
Okay. I am an indie author. I'm published with Dragonblade, which is a historical romance-only publishing company. I have 2 series out. The first one is When the Blood is Up. It's about women's prize fighting during the Regency era. The second one is called The Ladies Alpine Society, and that is Victorian-era mountaineering. My books are diverse. I myself am non-binary. I can do she, her. I can do they, them. That's fine. Just hello, please talk to me. Don't let me stand in a corner by myself. Thank you. I have been a reader as long as I can remember, learned to read by myself. And I was the youngest in my family, and so everyone else could read. And I thought it was this magical musical event that things just happened in your head like a hallucination, because I was a very literal child. And so I was convinced I couldn't read until my mom discovered me reading and was like, "What are you doing?" And I would just read her the book. And she was like, "That's reading." And I was like, "What?" And I felt so betrayed. I was 4. But then I was very impressed with myself. I was like, look at me go. Since then, I've been writing for a very long time. I do have a master's of fine arts in creative writing. So I do have the lit chops. I've been a critic for a very long time. So that's why I use a pen name to write. I've reviewed both classical music because I also have a bachelor's degree in music, in piano performance, and organ. I know that's super niche. Yes. And I'm a huge history buff, so I prefer to write and read about history. I do also read contemporary romance because it's fun, and historical fiction also. That's where I do my other critique work, because I am a member of the Historical Novel Society. Yeah, very sorry. I really enjoy the intellectual, and I'm originally from the Midwest, so I have already apologized twice so far in this amount of time. Hopefully you guys understand.
I am also a Midwest girly. I live in a cornfield about an hour south of from here, and that's not an exaggeration. I do live in a cornfield.
I live in California now, and I live in mountains that are very close to being on fire. So the fires you're seeing on the news are 10 miles from my house, so that's fun. I packed an evacuation bag as well as my bag for here at the same time. And I was like, this is fun. So I forgot to bring the pants I wanted to wear because they're in the evacuation bag and not in the Milwaukee bag. So I've got these pants though. They're still fine. That's the important part.
In the end, they are still pants. So today we're going to be talking about the politics of reading romance. So I just want to start off and say, all reading is inherently political. Books are political. Art is political. And why? Because our very existence is political. And I have a lot of people ask me, how can this be political? There's nothing about politics in what I'm reading. And so I think there is kind of a misconception in what something being political means. It does not mean Democrat or Republican. It does not mean American politics or even modern contemporary politics. Existence is political because everything around us is political, to what foods we have available to us, to what clothing is available to us, to what is seen on TV and what is being published and held in our bookstores and libraries. And this is not necessarily a left or right, Democrat, Republican. Politics expands far beyond left and right, Democrat and Republican. So that's how I always start off by explaining it.
I completely agree. Yes, 100%. And I do feel a lot that it is who gets to have justice. who is in power, who is not in power. You can even think about the Salem witch trials in terms of there were a bunch of women who were killed because they were not conforming correctly to a very strict standards. There is even the politics of our food. Again, because I write history and I love to read history, even sugar in your tea was political because tea was being made on Indian plantations in India, the Ceylon, that situation is still happening to this day in terms of who is owning that land, who is farming that land, and who is getting the profits from that land, as well as the sugar coming from the Caribbean that was being worked by enslaved peoples and who was benefiting from that. And so around the 1800s, like around that turn of the century between 1799, that era. But even that, putting sugar in your tea was also a political act for many people for generations, which is why there are a lot of people who have lemon in their tea instead, because that was a way that you could show your distaste for who was benefiting from the enslaved populations. So it is the food that you eat. It is what is available. It is who gets justice. And it also is how political uprisings happen. One of my favorite moments they call it hidden history because no one talks about it. In the 1700s, British government decided to put a toll road between London and Wales. So Wales, of course, is the original portion of England, and it's in the south. And it's mostly coal mining and that kind of thing. So and they were trying very hard to make the Welsh language go away. So they put a toll road in, which meant that the Welsh people could not bring their goods to London market. They just couldn't get there without paying money to get out of their own area. And they were mad about it. So Rebecca's Daughters were formed, wherein the coal miners put on dresses, gave themselves female names, and rioted, and pushed the guy that was manning the toll booth over and destroyed the barriers that were blocking the road. So their whole movement was men dressing as women, led by a woman, cis woman, to have a political movement. And that actually happened many, many times throughout history in Europe. It was very common for political risings to cross-dress in both ways, which I think is fascinating. And there is also the celebrations. There's a Lord of Misrule. There's a portion of, what we call now Christmas, the Advent time, where there was a night where everything changed, everything flipped. So the lords served the serfs, then the serfs got to dine as lords, men dressed as women, women dressed as men. And it was the night that you kind of got to blow off steam. And all of this hierarchy that you lived with all out throughout the year, they finally got a chance to just flip it all around and enjoy and act how they wanted to act. So inherently political, our celebrations, everything.
Politics are even the very air that we breathe. Access to clean air is extremely political. So politics affects us even indirectly, constantly, 24/7. And that is why books themselves are extremely political. There is a very long history and unfortunately something that we're seeing again here in the US pop up. And we do kind of every few decades. It cycles through because we never learn our lesson.
Well, and progress is not linear.
Exactly.
Everyone thinks that, women have it so much better now than it was 300 years ago. And it's like, let's talk about where you're talking about. Let's talk about which country you're discussing and what does better mean. There's just a lot of pedantic ways to discuss it. There is no straight line that says, yes, this was terrible and now it's better.
In a perfect world, it would be. That's what progress would look like. But it is very cyclical.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
And so the topic that I'm bringing up is book banning, something that we are seeing crop up a lot again. We did see book banning, going in a little more contemporary history was the 1970s is kind of the last time that we saw big crops of book banning. A little bit in the 80s too with the satanic panic trend.
Yes.
But back in the 70s specifically, it was anything that was considered to be indecent or have lacking in literary value. So very vague, undefined terms. And we're kind of seeing that a little bit today with saying things are obscene or inappropriate. We're using a little bit different terms, but they're still vague. And there's no defined answer as to, what is obscene? What is inappropriate?
So this also goes back to the Comstock laws of 1876. Pedantic, I know. So the Comstock Laws is actually a mail, like mail as in like postal service mail. It was said that they couldn't ship anything through the postal service that was considered obscene. So this is also why there were books that were not coming into the country, even stuff that is now like required reading in high school.
Especially books about female anatomy.
At Moll Flanders by Daniel Defoe, which was written in 1650, something like that, was banned by the Comstock Laws. So you actually could not get a legal copy of Moll Flanders in a public library until like the 1970s, I think, but when they repealed that portion. Because the beginning of Moll Flanders, yeah, thank you for the double flip. That is double bird. It starts off with Moll Flanders, who was a pickpocket in London, and she gets picked up and she's going to get hung unless she does something drastic. So she has sex with a prison guard to get pregnant so that she can get her sentence commuted and she could go become an indentured servant in the US. That is the beginning of the story. That's like the first 40 pages, like bam. But of course, you have prostitution, you have sex, you have a child out of wedlock. These are all inappropriate things. So you couldn't get a copy in the US. Also the reason you can get birth control, because how are you going to get birth control to women if you don't use the mail? Like, how are you going to get it to a clinic to distribute?
Yes, because it wasn't just mailed to people, it was shipping.
It was shipping. Yeah, it was
across the board.
Which is also interesting how it affected the LGBTQ community during that time period as well, to get books that were written about two women, written about two men. All of that was covered under those. So if you were caught disseminating that information, you weren't being caught for, they call it now like obscenity laws when you write, and like when they talk about like people getting in trouble for this, but it was the Comstock Law. It was because you had to ship it. So that's how they got you, because you had to use the mail.
And it was a very clever, evil, but clever way around being able to ban access to these books and to products such as birth control and even medical textbooks by controlling through the mail. Like, oh, we're not banning you from learning about female bodies. We just have a law that you can't ship this stuff. We're not straight up banning it. And so it's these kind of, clever and evil ways around to kind of get away with things. And this is something that we are seeing a little bit more popping up across the US today. Well, we're not banning books, we're just taking them out of certain areas. But that is what is widely considered to be a book ban, is reducing the accessibility.
Or having to show ID that you're 21 and older in Idaho to get into a public library. Because that's like, seriously, you're just going to say, don't read. Yeah. There's a couple of places in Idaho. They're doing their best to take this away from everyone. Because it's not just, we are here to talk about romance, yes. And so I have spoken a lot about history, but it's all interconnected because people have sex. Sorry. It's just, how else did you get here? This is only in Idaho, and it is under a lot of contention. I do see a lot of, especially with this administration, they're all like, oh, states' rights, which honestly, like, let's say the code word for what it really is. And so there are different states. I live in California, which I'm pretty happy about. But before that, I lived in Georgia. I lived in Georgia for 10 years. You can't buy alcohol on Sundays. They have blue laws. That's what they're called, to not buy booze, because booze is evil. So you just stock up on Saturday so you can go to church hungover, I guess is the thought. I'm not really clear on that one, but it is state by state. And so we are at a point where honestly, political activity is a necessary thing. We need to participate. And I do think that there are enough of the younger generation that are going to be like, you're going to like literally put a chain across the doorway to a public library. Like, fuck you guys. And so I do think that there is going to be a very large backlash, because backlash happens in all political arenas. We had a bunch of progress in the last 10 years, and now we have this administration that's trying very, very hard to take away the progress that happened with the LGBTQ community, with racial justice, with women's rights, immigrants, like all of those things. They're trying really, really hard to roll back. If you look at through history, that is what happens. You get progress, then you get the backlash. Then you get progress, then you get the backlash. It even happens in fashion, right? You see short skirts, then you see long skirts. Then you see short skirts, then you see long skirts. And it just happens over and over again.
To expand on that, one thing that we know is that when you enact, or when government officials enact some sort of prohibition or restriction, the people find a way, and many people find a way simply because they are told no. Will we have fake IDs for libraries? Maybe not specifically. However, there are so many ways around getting access to books that people tell you that you can't read or shouldn't read, especially with the internet today. Like, we'll probably likely see an increase in pirating of books if we see more expansion on book banning and restriction on access, is how I see it.
Honestly, it's the reason why I sell direct on my website, because I have books that have people of color, that have LGBTQ characters. My next series is all non-binary main characters. And I have been wary of being banned by Amazon for having explicit content that is not straight sex. So I sell direct. And even though I'm not at a point where I am like making money on my own website, I do it just to make sure that I have access, because otherwise I don't want it to be that there is some kid out there. Because I didn't, growing up, I'm kind of old. I'm in my very mid 40s, which I gotta say is kind of mid right now. And I didn't understand the term. I didn't know there was an option growing up. I wore men's clothing. My brother has called me little bro my entire life. It's just, I don't have an option of how I am built. This is the equipment I work with. I know we all have things about our bodies that we wish were different. Like you wish that your joints weren't so flexible, or you wish your ankle didn't hurt, or, you know, there's a whole bunch of stuff. Like this is what you get. You get one meat bag. Here it is. Enjoy. So I wish that I had that access to understand that there is a whole group of people out there who feel like I do in their own bodies. And the transphobia of the 80s and 90s was incredible. So I didn't know that there was a bunch of people out there that felt like this. And I wished that there had been a book that I could have read and been like, oh shit, that's me. And that just didn't exist. You know, there was always the tomboy character. And you're like, oh yeah, but then she ends up putting a bow in her hair and then everybody likes her. Like, that's weird. Okay. And so many makeover movies. So I just want to make sure that there are people who are needing to have that familiarity, who can see themselves in my work and can say, oh shit, that's me, because I wished that I had that and I didn't have that. So I want to make sure there's access to it. Thank you.
We applaud you for it, literally. So I wanted to expand some more on access to books as being political. You brought up Amazon. Amazon has been kind of on and off since really, I want to say like 2016 is when I at least first started noticing it, when they're like starting to attack certain books for their content, saying this violates Amazon's policies for being too graphic, too obscene, too pornographic. And it is pretty much always a book written by a woman. They don't seem to have the same issues with books by men. I mean, they sell Mein Kampf. Yeah. If you can buy Mein Kampf on Amazon, but you can't buy something a little more taboo sexually, I mean...
And there is some lines that I agree that should be in the sand. I'm thinking about, I think it was called Daddy's Toy or something like that. I don't know if you guys remember that.
Yes, that was a few months ago.
Yeah.
An author, and she was arrested for it due to her country's laws, and it was a very pro-pedophilic romance. I use it very loosely. Yeah. Yes. Australia, yeah.
Yeah. And it was like grooming at age 3. It was very clearly not consensual. And I think that's kind of where the line is for me anyway. But that said, there are plenty of thrillers and things like that have rape scenes in them that are part of the plot. And so that gets okayed because, you know, are you really going to throw James Patterson under the bus for iffy content? Like, probably not.
But if it's a female indie author, especially a female indie author of color, then she is far more likely to have her books taken down by Amazon. And we have seen this happen again and again and again. It hasn't been a one-off thing. There have been a couple dozen authors now who have been completely banned from selling on Amazon entirely. And as a result, we have seen a lot of rises in indie companies to help continue to make those books accessible and to kind of fight against Amazon. So there is a positive point to it. I love seeing such a huge rise in indie book companies.
Oh, yeah.
And really in the last like 6 years. There have been so many.
And I just want to give a shout out to my publisher, Dragonblade, who, when I said I would like to write a trilogy of non-binary characters who are in Edinburgh in the 1870s, and they were like, right on, do it. I was like, okay, because I was scared. I wasn't scared, but I was like, there's no way they're going to take this. Like, I was like, what else am I going to pitch? This is the only thing I want to write right now. Also politically, because it's my own rebellion. My first series, When the Blood is Up, I self-published, and I did that because when I was querying with different publishing companies, they told me she was too angry. And now everything's all about feminine rage. I'm like, the fuck? I was like, I was out there in 2018 trying to get you to buy my books, and you were like, oh, but she's so angry. And I was like, it's a book about boxing. Yeah, she's angry. So I self-published it, and also with that, I did break some of the other typical series rules. Like, typically in series, they want to make sure that if it's male-female, that it stays male-female throughout the entire series, so the reader knows what they're getting when they start a series, so they don't get upset that you have, for instance, for me, my first book is 2 white cis people, male, female, in a relationship. The second book is male, female, but it's interracial. The third book is non-binary, female, sapphic, also interracial. The fourth book goes back to 2 white people. That's a more regular power dynamic where he is the rich guy and she is looking for a home kind of situation. And yeah, then the fifth is a prequel. So also breaking the rules because I'm not staying in the same time period. I'm moving back 30 years. So again, breaking all the rules. But those rules exist because of politics, because that's what sells and they know how to market it. And so if I was with the publisher, there was no way I would have been able to do that. So I got on a tangent.
I mean, economics is extremely political.
Extremely political. Yes, absolutely. 100%.
Everything that a major publisher chooses to sell to us as readers is political because it is inspired based on what they think is going to sell. And economics are inherently political. And we know that in traditional publishing, especially when it comes to the big major houses, the main priority is what is going to make the most money. It is a business, and I can understand that. Now, and that's where we see kind of a difference when it comes to indie publishers as well as self-publishing, is we are seeing a lot more expression and a lot more freedom and a lot more books that are willing to break the rules and bend the rules that we have kind of boxed in with traditional publishing. And because of that, we are now seeing that indie publishing is leading the publishing industry. Everything that is popular in indie publishing and everything that is selling in indie publishing, trad publishing picks up 6 months to 2 years later.
Even Fourth Wing.
Yes.
Yeah. Even those huge, gigantic books that are like dominating the economic book world, like indie, because trad passed.
Which honestly, I do kind of love to see that indie publishing is kind of leading the industry and setting all of the trends and bending the rules. And I think that trad publishing is starting to kind of understand that too.
I'm actually not sure on that. And
yeah?
Here's the reason. So again, historical romance, they had, trad last October said historical romance is dead. They let go a bunch of very popular authors mid-series. The people I'm talking about are like Kate Bateman. She has been publishing for a long time, very big seller. She does very well. She's a lovely human being. If you ever get to go to a conference, she usually has antiques to show you, which is super cool. She got dropped mid-series from her publisher because they decided that historical romance was dead, which happens like every 7 years, again, cyclical. And so she is one. Another publishing friend, Amelie Howard, she said that she felt lucky that she got to finish the series, but her publisher was like, we're not picking up another historical romance. And she pivoted. So now she's writing YA fantasy because that is what was going to sell. And that's what she pivoted to, knowing that this was coming. However, indie publishing companies like Dragonblade are still doing very, very well. Oliver Heber Books, which also does indie historical romance, doing very, very well. If you look at Amazon's top sellers, those are the publishing companies that are in the top 100 for historical romance every time. Like HarperCollins and Avon, Kensington, they can't keep up because they're slower on the trends. like the trend on consent being a huge part of every sex scene, especially in historical romance, which has a rep for being rapey, which again, like there is I could do a whole panel on Catherine Woodwis in the 1970s and historical romance and rapiness and why that was a thing. But again, because it's political. So at any rate, the trad is not going to come around anytime soon. I think they're always going to be, they're a giant machine. It takes them 2 years to get a book out, right? So you write the book, they take it, they take forever for their edits. You give them back to them with all their edits, with all their things that they said they want. Then they have to go through a number of different, they have to get the cover designer, they have to get blurbs, then it's another year of sending out arcs and teasers and trying to get other authors to have time to read it so they can put the nice little blurb on the back cover. So it's 2 years. And so I think they're going to swing and miss every time. I really do. I mean, if they can move faster, that'd be different.
In some cases, we do see trad publishing moving faster, but it seems to be only for certain authors.
Yeah.
Yes, it's very much only certain authors. They're like, okay, we're going to publish one a year and churn this series out. And it's like, if trad publishing could meet that timeline equally across the board for all their authors, I think they would do a much better job at keeping up with the trends.
Exactly. They have some special authors that they pay attention to. And when those authors are interested in writing differently, then they do respond very well. R.F. Kuang comes to mind. She had her debut, Poppy Wars, and when she was 19, which honestly, like, we don't like to talk about jealousy in the book world. There's a lot of it, which then she wrote Yellowface, which was all about author jealousy.
Yellowface was a scathing review of the publishing company as a whole. And then they're like, we're going to make money off of this. And I don't think they really took the criticism to heart. They just saw the dollar signs in their eyeballs and like.
Yep. It is kind of funny to see, like, she cast herself as the dead one. Like the author, the self-insert was the dead.
Yeah.
So you're like, oh dang, that's weird. Okay.
And if you haven't read Yellowface yet, I just want to say absolutely pick it up. But I'm going to recommend the audiobook because the narrator did such an excellent job of being insufferable. To be honest, she did fantastic. She was wonderful. But I'm sitting here this whole time like, oh my God, June, stop talking.
Yes. So I also listen because, I am also one of those readers that I read all ways. So I have a Kindle, I have a paperback, and I have an audiobook usually going all at the same time. I'm wicked behind on all my podcasts, so sorry. God damn, another apology. No more, I'm out. I'm out for the day.
We're going to have a dollar jar for every time you say you're sorry.
Yeah, it's true. And I'm from North Dakota, which I feel like is even more like apologetic than most. Have you seen our weather? It's terrible.
Edie's like, I'm sorry from being from North Dakota.
Anyway, I did listen to Yellowface on audio, and I actually had a hard time, like maybe the first quarter, because I was like, my God, shut the fuck up. Look at your gigantic gift horse and be done with it, okay? And then she does terrible things. That's not the gift horse I was talking about.
Yeah.
I was talking about the fact that you got a publishing deal in the first place, even though it tanked. Like, just try to be grateful you even got that.
Yeah, I mean, Yellowface is something that we could talk about forever.
Yeah, that's not this podcast. Again, dang it. This should be a drinking game.
Mine's a dirty chai.
Nice. Yeah, mine's a straight up tea, which actually I bring my own tea. That is the little bag that I have. This is not a purse. This is literally my tea that I take with me. This is my kit. So I have my tea, I have hot water, and then my sweetener because I use agave nectar because I'm picky.
That's the way to do it.
I need the biggest cup you have, and I want just hot water in it. And she's like, okay, we can do that.
Honestly, they probably get that a lot. So I want to, so that we don't run out of time, I want to give everyone a chance who has some questions or thoughts that they want to share, an opportunity. So we're going to play a little game of pass the mic here.
You can't say gay, or you get banned from YouTube, or you get shadow banned or pulled. And I just want to know what you think about that. I have a lot of things in my mind swirling, none of it's landed. But I was wondering if you, one, heard that, and two, what do you think about it, and what do you think can be done to maybe address it or fix it?
So I'll go ahead and start with this one. Personally, I don't upload to YouTube directly. I upload to a podcast hosting site called Red Circle, and it sends it out to a bunch of different platforms. I haven't put much focus into YouTube because I'm audio only, because editing video takes too long and I am lazy. However, I have said far worse things than gay in the episodes that I've released on YouTube, and I have not been banned. I have also seen a lot of like booktube creators also talk about LGBT topics without being banned. Shadow ban, however, I know is a different topic entirely because algorithms at play. And so in that regards, I unfortunately don't have an answer on how to circumvent shadow banning. I will say whatever the fuck you want to say. And if YouTube has a problem with it, there's so many other platforms, especially if you use a hosting site. It uploads to over a dozen different podcasting apps for me, like one click of one button. So there's so many avenues that you can still express yourself and put your voice out there, even if YouTube is being a jerk about it. I hope that answers your question.
So it is part of the same problem that has happened before, where in an effort to protect a group, it is hurting the actual group. I have no doubt that if you look at YouTube, they're like, hey, you can't say gay because we don't want people ranting, anti-gay stuff. And that's the word they use. And so don't say that stuff. I don't know if you guys are old enough to remember where they wanted to ban certain words. And so one of the words was breast. Like you couldn't do a search for the word breast on the internet. They were trying to make sure that couldn't happen because they wanted to not let porn through, like to, again, think of the children. But then like, how can you look up breast cancer if you can't put in breast? So if you like ban anatomy words, then you're not going to be able to learn medical aspects, which we talked about with the Comstock laws. And so, yeah, I would bet that they are doing that in an effort to protect the community, but really it's actually hurting the community by saying that. So yeah, I mean, I totally agree. I think you should say what you want. It is going to be, shadow banning sucks. I know of some people, I feel like I have also been shadow banned because I do repost a lot of content that is about drag queens. And because, dude, have you seen drag queens? They're amazing. Like, right on with that hair. Like, I can't handle that. That's great. I'm so glad someone does. But yeah, it's tough. And I know people who also have been shadow banned, but I do think it's part of doing important work. I really do. And it goes also into Amazon as well. They ban nipples, which is weird. So there's if you start looking at certain books, there are no male nipples on display either because nipples were banned for a period of time. So covers with nipples on them out. Like, heaven forbid mammals lactate. Weird. So yeah, I agree. I think you should say what you want to say and fuck the haters.
Yeah.
Also very cursy on this podcast. Sorry.
That's a drink.
Yeah. Dang it. I'm almost out of tea.
Quick, get the hot water.
So just for age perspective, I turned 52 this week.
Happy birthday.
I started reading romance novels when I was like 12 and 13, sitting in the library, just reading them. And some of the books that I read, I know in the 80s, for those of you that weren't there, romances were really, really rapey. But some of the books that I read when I was 13, they've reissued them and they've changed them and they've made them less rapey, even though some of them completely changed the actual origin of the novel.
Did you have a question?
In terms of like the economics of politics, I read recently about how major credit card processors like Visa and MasterCard are limiting the content, I think, in the gaming world right now, that they will allow payments to be processed for. So like independent gamers, that gaming companies that have like not safe for work content in their games, like you can't use a Visa or MasterCard to pay for it. And I was wondering if there's like an awareness or concern in publishing, or particularly like you're selling your own books directly, or you're concerned about the payment processors preventing you from being able to sell your.
I had not heard that about Visa and MasterCard. There are some processors. So like I use Shopify. That is the platform that I use to process payments. I mean, because you need to have that for security reasons, right? Like I'm not going to put my credit card information on some rando website. No, I'm not going to do that. But if I know it's going through a platform that's trusted, like Shopify or something like that, then yeah. I have heard that about, I want to say Square, but I'm not 100%. I don't want to slander a platform that is.
It is Square.
It is. And it is one of those things that, yeah, I do worry about it a little bit, also from California. And obviously, it is a very pro-marijuana state, and you cannot use credit cards to buy anything in a dispensary. You have to use cash. So they have ATMs in the openings of every dispensary because you're not allowed to use a credit card because the federal law is still that marijuana is illegal, despite it being legal in many states. I actually don't know how many states it's legal in, but it's a lot. But you can't use that. And again, economic politics right there. It's a huge industry. It's making a boatload of money for a lot of people. It was called the Green Rush in California because those opening farms made a lot of money. And it is becoming more and more widely accepted in medical practices, especially with CBD oils and things like that, because they don't interact with other medications. And it's a great way to have relief without using opioids or ingesting something that's going to damage your liver. So at any rate, there is absolutely politics of money. I don't know what would happen if all of those platforms shut down. There has always been smaller processing companies coming through. So I'm sure if things do go that direction, there is going to become a company that becomes a safe space. And whether or not it's based in Canada or England or some other spot that we could use, I'm sure it will pop up. It just sucks that is the world we're living in because it's ridiculous. It's ridiculous.
To expand on that a little bit, yes, we do see it across multiple industries right now. I will expand on what I mentioned about Square, which is owned by Intuit. If you have a type of metaphysical or spiritual or witchy business and you do something like tarot readings, you cannot use Square to take payments because Square, or I should say Intuit's policy is that it is a scam. So if you are using that to take payments, I used to do readings at various events locally to me, and you cannot even put in, you can type it in, physically type it in, but they reserve the right to ban the transaction or even withhold the money if you say this is for a tarot card reading because it is spiritual, metaphysical, and it's supposed to be for entertainment purposes only, and it's taking advantage of people as their reasoning for it. But they do things like this to restrict access and to limit ways that people can make money on things that they don't personally support, whether it's due to their religious beliefs or their political beliefs. So we do see these things happening, and it is often in, kind of smaller, less mainstream industries that we see it first. I do think it is always possible for something more widespread, like saying you can't buy smut with your credit card. I think that's possible. I don't think it's very likely. It's not very probable, but if the right people are in charge and in power, something like that could always happen.
There was a proposal in Texas to say that if you caught someone reading smut, if you looked over their shoulder on their Kindle and you could tell that they were reading something that was sexually explicit, that you could basically go tell on them and then the person reading would get fined. It was being proposed in the Texas legislature.
There was something similar proposed in Ohio last year as well to ban the creation or circulation of anything that was considered to be obscene, include nudity, or have any sort of sexually explicit content. And the way that this bill was written, and it fortunately did not pass, but the way it was written, it would have included rated R movies. It would have included writing smutty fan fiction at home on your laptop, even if you didn't share it. It would have included taking, selfies of a certain nature for, a private situation. It would have included all of that, even in the comfort of your own home. Just creating those materials they were asking for a $25,000 fine. It didn't pass, but we do see these bills being introduced more and more and more. Statistically, one of them is going to stick at some point, unless we as a whole, as a people, continue to fight against it.
I completely agree. Again, this is just the time that you don't get an opportunity to sit back and be like, oh, you want to talk about zoning laws downtown? Do your thing. Don't care. I wish that was the political content I was consuming right now. I don't like those yellow cones that they put on You know, like that. I want that. Yes, I want that to be the front page of my newspaper, to be like, residential neighborhood wants to have a lemonade stand. Yes, let's talk about that instead. But yes, I do. There's more and more scary laws that are being proposed.
Let me tell you, the words breaking news are becoming like the scariest words.
My turn sometimes. I think we have another question.
So I am from Ohio, Midwest, and so I would just like to start with saying, I'm sorry, just to do it right after.
Just do it.
And really disheartening that what's happening with, putting books and restrictions in all kinds of nefarious ways is also happening. And it's really depressing. Or even genuine ignorance that have been applied. Just because I think the paper that I saw, it was used the word female too many times. Quotes being used here for the podcast, and it was
Yeah.
I was like,
It's fish don't exist. I hear you on that. So my father-in-law is a scientist. He's retired. He worked for NASA for a gajillion years. He's a mathematician. He focuses on solar physics. He's written a couple of books that, honestly, page 1, first paragraph, I'm like, I don't know what the fuck you're talking about. I'm fairly well educated. I should understand at least one sentence. I don't. But he, of course, has many friends still in the rocket business, and he was talking about how there's a bunch of projects that have been just completely scuppered because of the funding dried up. And it's disheartening that even space efforts are being taken, their money is being just taken away. Like, they just don't have it. And there was people whose projects that were set for the next 10 years, that was the project they were going to work on. And that was where the funding was going to come from. It's just gone. They're like, I don't even know what I'm going to do now. How do I exist when my field of research has just been deemed unimportant or too female? Or there was the paper that used the word trans twice and that got scuppered, but it was
Transgenic mice has nothing to do with transgenderism.
No. But they were like, what? Trans? No, none of that.
yeah, that was they're changing the gender of mice.
About these poor mice whose gender was
I'm so sorry.
those tiny mouse penises being cut off, and they're blessing and curse all at the same time.
Just got to put that one out there. Yeah. I do think it's absolutely wild that women's bodies are so politicized that we can't even study fish.
Yeah.
I think we have time for one more question.
So, a friend of mine is an indie author in Australia.
Rock on.
And she wrote a book series. It's one of my favorites she's ever published. There is a gender fluid character. And I mean that literally. Like, they can transition themselves in a snap from one gender to the other and back. And it was such a cool take on gender fluidity. Yeah. And she did an amazing job representing that, because she had a bunch of people who consider themselves gender fluid, non-binary, really help her with the research. So my question for you is she had to take that series down because she got so much hate. Again, she's in Australia. Now, this was about early COVID days. So obviously every couple of years, as you were mentioning, things change. So she has said and the storyline was so good on every level. Like, this one character wasn't even the main character, but she did such a good job on the world build and just the character development on everybody. And she's to the point where she feels that she's never going to be able to release that series again, as is she needs to rewrite it. So my question for you is, kind of stemming off of an earlier question over here, about rewriting. Do you think that there is an appetite after a couple of years when the Drown houses start actually publishing certain things again, or starting to publish, like with the non-binary that you were mentioning for your own series? Do you think there's an appetite for people to republish or restart a series that they have done in the past, when there's a better appetite, in sarcastic air quotes for everybody else, for that type of character or that type of a law?
Yes, I do. Again, the problem is how visible you are in terms of marketing. And that's kind of the issue, because, like, for instance, I don't get any hate about any of my stuff because no one knows who I am. So hooray. But also, my book covers are not clearly non-binary. Like, if you look at that book cover, that particular book cover, it was a finalist for the Lambda. Like, it's like super gay. And it is no one says anything about it because the cover is a woman in a big ball gown sitting on a couch. And if you look closely, you will notice she is wearing men's work boots, but you have to read the book to understand the content. And so they're not going to do that. That's too much work reading. So, I mean, a lot of it is the marketing that goes along with it. What do your covers look like? You know, how much can you get out of that little blurb? And that's where your hate's going to come from, because those people are stupid, frankly. Like, I'm going to just say it. They're dumb. So yeah, I think there is absolutely, tell your friend that I would read it. Please publish it again. And, you know, I don't know, put some different cover on it. And like,
it wasn't even on the cover art. It was in the blurb. You had to read. Yes.
Betrayal.
somebody. Yeah.
I would just like to say she should absolutely republish because I would like to read.
Yeah. Same. Yep. Yep. Yes.
All right, so we are like right at our time, so we are going to have to wrap up here. So I want to thank everyone so much for joining us for this panel. I want to thank you, Edie, for joining me last minute. We had no prep time on this. We're just like, hey, let's do this thing, and hopefully people will like it. So thank you.
Oh, thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone, for listening. This has been Must Love Books. You can find us on Instagram, Facebook, and Patreon under @MustLoveBooksPodcast. Thank you and happy reading.
If you're a podcast host, listen up, this one's for you. My name is Allie Jackson. I'm the host of Finding Mr. Height, a dating and relationship podcast that I've been doing for 4 years now, sharing my positive and practical approach to dating that's built on my own life experience. And I wanted to share another experience that I've had, my secret behind monetizing my show. It's called Red Circle, and I was just telling my colleague about how much I love their platform. With Red Circle, not only am I getting a seamless hosting experience, but I also love the support I receive in ad sales. It's not just typical ad sales either. It's targeted opportunities based on my show and my life. And the platform is super simple. You just set your preferences and Red Circle matches you with sponsors that align with your show. You can vet every opportunity and their platform gives you great analytics. More recently too, my Red Circle team has brought me opportunities outside of my podcast on social media to really augment the podcast partnerships, bring them full circle. I just can't recommend them enough. If you want to give it a try, go to redcircle.com to get your free trial. That's redcircle.com for a free trial.